The Toronto Raptors are going to be actively pursuing Portland's third overall pick in the upcoming NBA draft, but another lottery pick should be on their radar in their bid to move up the lottery, and that comes from the Indiana Pacers. And in today's video, we cover what the trade might look like and if it makes sense for the Raptors. Let's get into it. Welcome everybody to Amateur Hour Sports, the YouTube channel dedicated to Toronto Raptors content and videos, live streams, and shorts. If you enjoy what you see from today's video, then make sure you subscribe to the channel, help me on my road to 15,000 subs, and get yourself ready for all the off-season content I have coming for the trade season, free agent season, but most importantly right now, the NBA draft season. And a few of those things being hit on this video today as we're looking at a trade involving the upcoming NBA draft. In our previous video, we spoke about the Toronto Raptors' potential to move up the draft and get that third overall pick from the Portland Trail Blazers. However, it's not quite moving up the draft for the Raptors, because in that case scenario, and in the one I'm going to present in this video, they're not actually going to be moving the 13th overall pick to make it happen. They're just going to be having two lottery picks for the upcoming draft. And for a Toronto Raptors team lacking direction, lacking depth, getting some draft picks in this year's draft can really help along with the process of adding in some additional players to this team and adding in a bigger sense of direction to this team that was stuck all in on nothing this season, finishing 9th, losing in the first round of the play-in tournament, ultimately missing out on the playoffs despite having made a buying trade, as we know, at the NBA trade deadline when they acquired Jakob Poeltl and sacrificed their 2024 first-round pick in order to make that happen. The Raptors next season, they don't have a pick, so there's no sense of being a bad team next season. We want to put out a good on-court product to compete and try and make the playoffs, but we also want to put a focus on developing, making the team better, seeing what we have next season so that we're not feeling this sense of nothing in the next offseason where we have no idea where the team is going. We want to have faith in the direction. We want to have belief in the direction that this team is going. And I think over the course of this season and from what we've seen from the offseason so far, Raptors fans are just in a little bit of a confused state. And there's a big clash between fans of exactly what the team should be next season, but ultimately fans would be optimistic and excited about young talent coming to this team, coming through the draft. The Raptors, if anything, are a team that drafts extremely well, and they have a good track record of drafting well at the top of the NBA draft in the Masai Ujiri era, to be specific, and loading up on lottery picks does make a lot of sense, but doesn't make sense to cost a player like OG Anunoby in the process. OG Anunoby, since coming into the league, has been a firm fan favorite with the Toronto Raptors and their fan base because, well, he is an excellent defender that can always guard the opposition's best player, and he can always guard them no matter what their position is. Luka Doncic is point guard, OG Anunoby can guard him. Jason Tatum is a forward, OG Anunoby can guard him. Nikola Jokic, two-time MVP at center, well, OG Anunoby can do a job in guarding him as well, which makes him an extraordinarily desirable piece around the entire NBA. We know that because along with the defense, now he is an all-defense recognized player in the NBA. He brings offense to the team. He brings a great amount of shooting, excellent in catch-and-shoot situations, can put the ball on the floor a little bit, but can get to the rim really well as well due to his size, due to his physique, being a very strong player and a very aggressive finisher in those areas in the paint. A very good player, very good complementary player. Every team in the NBA, as I say so many times, would want a player like OG Anunoby. And a team who had firm interest in OG Anunoby at the most recent trade deadline and seems to remain with the interest in this offseason is the Indiana Pacers. Now, OG Anunoby, if you don't know, does have ties to Indiana already. Though he was born in England, then moved to Missouri at a very young age, he played 2 years of college ball at the Indiana University. So ties to the place, the location, they would accept him, they would embrace him 100%. And the Pacers, with all due respect, they're an extremely small market from an NBA standpoint. So they don't want to continue to churn out a product that is not winning. They want to find a product that is going to be in the playoffs to get fans excited. The Indiana Pacers, for large parts of the 2010s, were just, they got to 2 conference finals. I'll give them that. Like, very impressive in order to do that. But they seemed at the tail end of that era to be comfortable just making the playoffs every season, especially in the era when they had Paul George on their team. They were definitely afraid to make the big splash, the risky splash, to try to get the team into contender status, which ultimately led to the departure of Paul George when he was quite near his best that we ever saw him in his NBA career. But they want to get back to the playoffs. OG Anunoby is certainly a player that can help them do that and can complement a player like Tyrese Haliburton extraordinarily well. I can see the Pacers this offseason shopping players like Buddy Hield, shopping players like Miles Turner to tinker the roster a little bit more, but that 7th overall pick can be a great chip to trade to acquire a player like OG Anunoby. And for the Raptors, this is where we would have some conversations of if this trade makes sense. Let's rewind to just about a year ago now when the Portland Trailblazers were shopping their 7th overall pick. The Portland Trailblazers at the time and still have interest in acquiring OG Anunoby, but at the time, the Raptors, coming off of that great season, winning 48 games, 5th seed in the Eastern Conference, they wanted to keep their players. But the Portland Trailblazers, according to reports, and those reports seem very viable, the Trailblazers were very much aggressively pursuing a trade for OG, and people within the Raptors front office said it'd be extremely difficult to replace a player of OG Anunoby's talent and caliber with the 7th overall pick. It'd be really hard to get a player of the same valuation out of that 7th overall pick. So high praise from the Raptors front office. It seemed like they weren't really interested in trading OG Anunoby at all, but maybe after a season where, hey, things didn't go your way, you need a little bit of a shakeup, maybe in a season where OG Anunoby is extension eligible and you don't want to deal with the free agency next season, maybe if the Indiana Pacers have that interest, are willing to move that 7th overall pick in a draft that seems pretty talented near the top, maybe that is enough to entice the Raptors to explore what the exact trade scenario could be. And looking around online at some different trade scenarios, different reports, different rumors, I do like the base that I found from an article on Raptors Rapture, which I will link in the description below, but I do like the base of the trade that came up here ultimately. But what the trade could be manufactured around from a Raptors perspective to make sense is the Indiana Pacers acquiring OG Anunoby. Our way would come, of course, that 7th overall pick. As I mentioned earlier, a player they might be shopping is Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield could come to the Raptors. That would balance out from a salary perspective and also additional draft capital in the process. Likely a 2nd-round pick, likely a future 1st-round pick. So a very high 1st-round pick, the 7th overall pick, another 1st-round pick for the future, and a 2nd-round pick coming to the team along with Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield is going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, which seems like a pretty good scenario for the Raptors in all honesty. Buddy Hield will come in and bring some outstanding shooting to the team. Buddy Hield is safely a top 5 shooter in the NBA. You could make a case as a top 3 shooter in the NBA along with Steph Curry, Desmond Bane, Buddy Hield. I clumped those players together likely as my top 3 off the top of my head. So brings in that excellent shooting to the team. Of course, the Raptors desperately need that shooting. And like I said, we want to win games next season. Buddy Hield coming off of an outstanding year with the Pacers, it does make sense to have him into the team. And the UFA thing, it doesn't really throw me off the player. Yes, it's a rental, but also that opens up a lot of cap space at the end of next season. That's something the Raptors could definitely use. Along with that, you get the draft capital. You get to make that 7th overall selection for this upcoming season, and you maintain your 13th overall selection. So 2 great young players coming into this team. It's just a cost of OG Anunoby. OG, a coveted piece within the Toronto Raptors system, but hey, if there are some great offers coming in, the Raptors seemed at least marginally interested in shopping him around the most recent NBA trade deadline. They ultimately were asking for 3 first-round picks and a young player to make it happen, but I think things can kind of go a little bit less than 3 first-round picks when one of those picks is going to be the 7th overall pick, which is probably more valuable than 2 late first-round picks coming from, let's say, the Memphis Grizzlies. So that's where the valuation comes to play. Maybe you're not getting a good young player, but you're definitely getting a great role player that is going to make a big difference to your team for the upcoming season and at least provides a little bit more sense of direction for this team and a little bit more of a fundamental piece of an NBA roster coming into your team for next season. That makes sense from a Raptors perspective for the base of that trade. Now, how about from the Indiana Pacers perspective? If I'm Indiana, look, I understand that they want to be competitive. They want to try and start being competitive, but I just don't know if they're quite ready to be in that position. You know, a nice young player like Ben Mathurin coming into the team. Tyrese Haliburton is a stud, all-star caliber player, of course, as we've seen, like an outstanding point guard. If you can get some good value from Miles Turner, maybe a trade manufacturers where they do acquire DeAndre Ayton in exchange for Miles Turner, something comes of that. I don't know if the Pacers are in the right position to start making some winning trades, but hey, Like I said, if it's a smaller market that is intent on starting to win games to really boost up the fan morale within the team, really start to boost the financial earnings the team generates by getting into those playoff positions, maybe something like a play-in tournament is going to be enough for that team to be satisfied for next season. I'm not quite in tune with the Pacers like that, but if that is something they want to go for next season, then obviously OG Anunoby can make a great degree of sense to that team bringing him in. Buddy Hield goes out. Hey, Ben Mathurin slips in to the starting lineup instead of playing as a sixth man. There's a lot of ways that Pacers can go about it. OG Anunoby is a great piece to add for them. Man, it would suck to see him go, but I'm thinking like now the starting lineup for the Raptors could be Fred VanVleet if he's retained, Buddy Hield, Siakam, Barnes as your forwards, Jakob Poeltl coming in. Then you have the 7th pick and the 13th pick coming off your bench. The team is deeper. There's young players building up. I think that makes a great degree of sense for the Raptors. Not quite sure what their valuation quite is for OG Anunoby, but I am more than open to the possibility of making it happen, and I think that this is a trade that I would go through. But how about you? Do you think you'd make this trade? Would you trade OG Anunoby for a package around the 7th overall pick? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, because that is it for me for today. Drop a like if you enjoyed this video on Amateur Hour Sports, and subscribe to the channel for more Raptors content just like this. Appreciate all the love that I get on the channel. Appreciate all the support in the recent weeks. We'll see you again next time for another video.